In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw the two-dimensional triangle and the three-dimensional variants of the cone and the pyramid. Now, when you're drawing a triangle, what you want to do is you want to create nice smooth lines. Try not to do this like hairy little line because you tend to get a little bit more jagged than you want it to be. The way that you want to do it is you want to do a couple of like light passes and then do a committing line. You don't have to do it in one stroke. You can go over a couple times to kind of hone it in, kind of like taking practice swings in baseball. You want to take a couple of practice swings at making the line before you actually make the line. And it's okay if you go over it a couple times because this is just a sketch and we are trying to just build our muscles. The other thing is don't draw it from your wrist because your wrist is naturally very ovular and it creates curves. Try to use your entire arm. You draw from your elbow and use that whole range of motion of your fingers, your elbow, and your wrist. The last bit of advice is it's okay if you go over because you can always use the eraser and erase out so that the corners are nice and sharp. So don't just kind of go around in just a circle because that tends to get a little bit more jagged than if you take your time creating one side at a time and then erasing when you need to, because that'll look a lot sharper and a lot cleaner. So I'm going to clean up this one. So go ahead and fill up half of your paper with a variety of different triangles and try to test out how smooth you can get your lines. Try out a couple big ones, a couple small ones, a couple like obtuse angles, a couple acute angles. Try to see if you can control drawing at a variety of different angles and trying to keep your lines nice and straight. I'm going to speed up the video here, and then I'll slow it back down once we get to the 3D variants of cones and pyramids. So now that you're all warmed up creating two-dimensional triangles, it's time to move on to three-dimensional shapes. Now, when we're considering a triangle, while we're looking at it directly from the side, it'll look 2D. But when we start to turn it, much like when we did ellipses, we can see that a circle will start to form, and we can create little thin ellipses, or we can make very wide ellipses. And I can start from the base if I want to, and then go from the furthest edges and draw it up to make my cones. So that is ellipses, and it can go up directly from the center, or I can have it go kind of off to an edge instead, if I'm making something like, we'll say like a beak. Something to do as you are making your various cones is consider the dimension, much like when we're working on our cylinders and our circles and even our cubes. Keep in mind that the sides are parallels and they all run down until they get down to this bottom part, but they're also curved if I'm creating a cone. And so I can create these curved sections in the horizontal parts, and then I can create the straight sections all leading to that top portion. We can see that we have a cone that has just a little bit extra dimension, and I can draw this in on the inner side as well and make it look very three-dimensional. Now, when we get to working on pyramids, they work roughly the same way, that from the side it looks just like a triangle. But if I draw a square, and I'm going to create this kind of like a parallelogram kind of square so that it looks like it's in a little bit more perspective, all I have to do is choose a point that is going to be my top. And then I'll draw up from each of the sides or draw up from each of the corners, and it will create my pyramid. Now, remember, as the sides go up, we want to keep things parallel to whatever side it's on. And then as it's going vertical, those things shrink a little bit as it's moving up. And that'll give us some dimension. And this doesn't have to come from squares. I could have it a pyramid that has a triangular base. Then I'll choose a point that's going to be the tip. that everything is reaching out to. I could even be significantly more complicated, and I could make let's see, I'm going to make a pentagram, give my tip out there, and then I'll connect each of my corners out to the tip of the pyramid. And we can see we get a very complicated pyramid. And if I want to give dimension, I'll just follow those parallels to make it nice and smooth. So go ahead and create a variety of different pyramids and cones, practicing giving dimension to our triangle. And so there you go. That is the basic shapes of triangles and 3D forms of pyramids and cones. Remember to stay loose when you're creating your designs, but also to think about the three-dimensional space that they're taking up. And it's okay if they're a little bit messy because you're building your skill, and these are generally used for sketching.